You guys have been asking for this for quite some time, so welcome to r/EntitledParents with me, Arthur TV. First up, and fittingly with this channel, we've got an entitled passenger on board an airline. You weren't eating it, so I stole it and gave it to my kid, by Sarah Whiteman. So this just happened a few hours ago on my flight home, and I figured I'd post this whilst it was still fresh in my mind. EM is entitled mum and FA is flight attendant. So my flight had just taken off and they were coming around with food. Seated next to me is the entitled mother and her kid. They told the flight attendant that they didn't want to buy anything and they just got water and refused the free snacks. The flight attendant double checks to make sure they didn't want anything and again, they refuse. I had a bit of an upset stomach at the time and I knew I wasn't going to eat anything right then, but I bought some Pringles and got their free cookies with my ginger ale to snack on later. It was a 4-hour flight. Less than 10 minutes later, the kid starts whining that he wants Pringles. The entitled mother eyes mine but doesn't say anything. Noticing her look, I quickly stashed mine into my bag, thinking she'd be a decent human and not go through my stuff, before going to use the washroom. There's a bit of a line at the back of the plane, so I'm gone for about 10 minutes at the most. I come back and my bag is open on my seat, food all pulled out, and the kid is there, munching on my fucking food. The cookies are already done and the kid is stuffing his face with my Pringles. Excuse me miss, I said, but did you go into my bag and take my food? You weren't eating it and my child was hungry, she replies. I didn't even hesitate before hitting the attendant button. Miss, that was my food that I paid for. You had no right to take it. It's not like you were eating it and you could use losing some weight anyways. It's at this point in time that the same flight attendant that sold me the Pringles comes over and asks what the problem was. I told the flight attendant that I had left to use the washroom and that I came back to find this lady had gone through my bag to take the food I had purchased out and given it to her child. The entitled mother turns and says, "No, I didn't. I purchased those." "Ma'am," said the flight attendant, "you refused my offer for any food twice. Did you take her food?" "She wasn't eating it," screamed the entitled mother. At this point in time, I lean over to the little kid. "Hey little man, can you do me a favour?" He nodded, still stuffing his face with my Pringles. "Can you point to where your mum got the chips from?" Immediately, he points to my bag. "Ma'am," said the flight attendant, "you're going to have to pay her back for her chips." "No way," screamed the entitled mother. "She wasn't even eating them." "Regardless if she was eating them or not, you stole what she purchased. Either you buy her a new pack or we will have to get the police to intervene once we land." The entitled mother loses her fucking mind at this, but the flight attendant stands her ground and makes her buy me a new set of chips. She also moves me to an empty row in the back and sets me up with another packet of free cookies and another drink. The flight attendant then lets me know that she'll be informing the police of what happened and that she was very sorry that it happened. I don't know if she wound up getting arrested once she left the plane, but I sure as hell hope I never run into her again. That flight attendant did a cracking job. The Leo Jones of the sky. Your Yard is Now Our Park by Kindred Flame. My partner and I purchased the house next door to my best friend. I'd lived with him for close to a decade when his kids were babies, so they viewed my house as an extension of theirs and were in and out all day, every day. I have a more flexible schedule than he and his wife, so I have them in the mornings, after school and on days off school. I had a pool in my yard and because my friend's kids were still little, I installed a retractable cover and made sure it was locked so they couldn't open it. My friend's yard had one of those wooden fort climbing wall swing set deals and a large sandbox. Throughout the year, we spent most evenings outside, grilling, drinking and watching the kids play and swim and whatever. One summer day, I came home from work a little earlier than normal and started to prep for dinner. I heard a knock at my back door, which was odd since my buddy's kids never knocked. I went to see who it was and I discovered a mum and 2 kids who looked to be maybe 5 to 7 years old. As I opened the door, she informed me that her kids needed to use the bathroom and that I needed to come out and get the cover off my pool. I was confused and asked her to repeat herself, and she said that her kids needed to pee and that they were hot and bothered with playing in the sandbox, so I needed to open up my pool. I asked her why she was in my friend's yard and what made her think that her kids were welcome to swim in my pool or use my bathroom for that matter. She got really bitchy and told me that she had moved into the house behind us and she had watched my buddy's kids come over all the time and I opened the pool for them. She insisted that since I was willing to open my pool for the kids next door, I should also open it for the children who live behind me. I tried explaining the relationship between my best friend's family and mine, but she claimed it didn't matter that I had known them since birth and pretty much helped raise them. I just needed to get to know her kids too and it would be okay. I told her no and closed the door on her. She spent a while knocking and fussing at me through the window and then had her kids pee in a planter on the side of the patio. When I still didn't react, she took her kids back into my friend's yard to play on the swings. I texted him to let him know what was going on right at the moment he was letting his £300 worth of newfies out into the yard without noticing the unwelcome visitors. The mum starts shrieking and climbs up into the fort, leaving both kids on the swings. She starts demanding that we put the dogs inside, and how dare my friend let his dogs out into his own yard when her kids are clearly playing there. He tells her to get the hell out and calls the police. When the cops arrived, she put on the whole waterworks about how her kids were just looking for friends, and my buddy's kids were somehow bullying her kids even though they'd never met, that he invited her over just to let his dogs attack her children, blah blah blah. They eventually moved her back onto her own property and then came back later to tell us they warned her about coming back. She lived in that house for almost a year before she and her husband divorced. During that year, I had to replace the lock over the pool cover controls 3 times, have a fencing company remove a gate at the back of my property that was meant to let the lawnmower through, and eventually pay a security company to come check on the yard anytime we were going to be away for more than a few hours. We found her and her kids in our yards repeatedly, but she'd leave when we got home. What finally resolved the issue was my partner catching her in the pool. She told him she knew the man that owned the house and that he had told her it was okay to swim. He told her that he was married to the man that owned the pool and that it's not okay to swim. She apparently had a bad reaction to realising she was immersing her sons in gay water. We didn't see her again after that. I bet they were absolutely devastated as well. What a divvy. You're my child, I have the right to poison you, by Arkansas. I'm allergic to fish and seafood. It's not the anaphylactic type of allergy, thank goodness, so I'm not going to die if I eat some, but I do throw up, have a stomachache and a massive headache for a few hours. Enough fish and seafood and I break out in small red hives all over my arms. My mother didn't believe it as a child. I couldn't stand up to her properly. She'd force me to eat stuff with seafood or fish in it to prove that I wasn't allergic, and then ignore me as I was sick. One day, she held a dinner party. I was dressed up beautifully and trotted out to parade before the guests. At the time, I was around 9, precocious for my age and absolutely fed up with my mother making me sick. When she held out a fish cutlet for me to eat, I saw my chance. Me, loudly. I can't eat that, I'm allergic to fish. No, you're not. Eat it. I'm allergic, I'll throw up. No Asian mother will back down in front of guests for fear of looking like she can't discipline her child. My mother grabbed the fish cutlet, shoved it to my mouth, and said in her most firm voice of command, "Eat." So I ate it. Cut to about 10 minutes later. I go up to my mother and tug on her sari to get attention. Me, I don't feel well. And I vomited on her, on the expensive carpet, and in full view of all the guests. My mother has a reputation for being a kind, generous, charitable, and very religious woman, so in front of all the guests, she couldn't do anything except from act sympathetic and send me off to bed to recover. She never made me eat fish or seafood again. The kid might have won this round, but there is no doubt in my mind that that parent got their revenge one way or another. You will date my daughter or I'll get you fired, by societal member. So for some context, I'm a 17-year-old male and I work at a Segway tour company. It's actually really fun. I get to ride Segways around the city and talk to people and get paid to do it. Plus, the tipping isn't bad. So anyway, there was a tour booked a couple of days ago and I came in about 20 minutes early to answer emails and get everything ready. The group shows up, mother and daughter, and that's when things get interesting. So I say to the daughter, "Alright, I have some waivers for you to sign. How old are you?" She replies, 16. So I say, "Okay then, you don't need to sign a waiver." So I ask this because if kids are younger than 18, their parents sign the waivers for them. But the entitled parent only heard me say the first part, not when I said that the daughter didn't need to sign a waiver. So she thought I was just asking her daughter how old she was. This was probably what started it all. So we go on tour and while I'm giving my spiel, the entitled parent keeps interrupting me and telling me stuff about her daughter to find out if we're compatible. So I was there saying, "And so this non-profit organisation opened in," and the entitled parent butts in asking me if I was in college. I laughed it off and said, "No, I'm a junior in high school." I'm usually pretty free with info about myself on tours because it helps keep people relaxed and it initiates conversations during lulls in the tour. Plus, it helps with tipping. So the entitled parent replies, "Oh, my daughter's also a junior. She's an artist." Stuff like this keeps happening throughout the tour and every time the daughter gets redder and redder. My mum does this too, where she just tells random mall attendants about me, so I know what the daughter's going through and I feel her pain. At the end of the tour, I tell the two of them that they have 15 minutes to go around the town and then they can just meet me at the back of the Segway place. I get back and start getting things set up for their return. They roll in,
if you'll pardon the pun,
and I take their Segways to start charging them. "So what do you think of my daughter?" asked the entitled parent. "Pardon me, what?" I replied. "I saw you checking her out during the tour. Are you gonna ask her out?" "Mom, stop," says the daughter. Ma'am," I said. "I just recently got out of a relationship and I'm not really looking for anything right now." "What?" said the mother. So I was like, "Huh? Is my daughter not good enough for you?" "No, that's not it. I just said that I just got out of a relationship." "You're going to date my daughter and that's final. You can't tell me what to do. I'm not your kid, and if I don't want to date your daughter, I don't have to. Besides, you haven't even asked her if she wants to date me." The daughter turns to her mother and says, "Yeah, I don't want to date him." "See?" I said. I'm going to call your boss and tell him about your horrible customer service. You're never going to work in this city again. So I said, pulling out my phone, alright, you want to call him and explain this situation? How you're trying to force me to date your daughter and get me fired for saying no? Then I guess the absurdity of the situation finally sunk in and her face transitioned from pure rage to slight confusion. Wait, maybe I don't want to, said the parent. No, I replied, let's call him. I start to go through my contacts and press my boss's name. Let's have this conversation. I don't think that's a good idea, she says, and the phone starts ringing. She calls over to her daughter and says, let's go. The entitled parent runs out the door. The daughter turns to me and says, I'm sorry, and then follows her mum. I hang up the phone before my boss answers and start cleaning the segways. I'd actually love to sit here and laugh at how weird this girl's mum is, but I've been in the exact same situation. My dad asked a girl out on my behalf when I was like 16, 17 without me asking him to. I hadn't given any indication that I liked this girl and I have no idea why I felt the need to do it, but daughter, whoever you are, I feel your pain. That is unfortunately all we have time for today. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like and subscribe for more Reddit videos coming soon. Also, feel free to comment down below if there's any subreddit you want me to cover next. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.